Watershed moment. Inflection point. Unprecedented. The hacking I'm talking about of Hugging Face. You've seen the story by now, and we talked about it here on the program. This is ChatGPT 5.6, which you may or may not be using. I'm guessing not. This is the new fancy one until the next one comes out. Its models were asked, this is a test that went wrong. They broke out of the sandbox, as you keep hearing. What does any of this mean? They were testing this model to solve a hacking challenge during pre-deployment at Hugging Face. The models decided on their own to break out of the so-called sandbox, this walled environment they're being tested in, try to figure it out on their own. They figured Hugging Face might have the answers. They used stolen credentials to break into this thing without anybody telling it to. So that freaked out a lot of people. This is the kind of stuff that the CEO of Anthropic likes to talk about, right? Dario Amodei. And in fact, the head of Anthropic's Frontier Red team, which sounds scary, Logan Graham, said he told his team to, quote, remember this moment as the first true AI safety incident. Little less extreme. The boss at Hugging Face, the CEO, called it an attack unlike anything we've seen before. So what's going on here? The White House is supposed to be testing these models before they're out in the general public, right? We've talked a lot about the posture that the administration has taken here. And there's a new AI protection bill that Ted Lieu's got up on the Capitol right now. They just can't seem to get anything off the launch pad when it comes to regulations here in Washington. Should this be scary? Should this be exciting? Or is it just another stop on the road to the next DeepSeek moment? I don't even know if I have the right questions, but I know someone who has the answers, and I'm really excited to say that Miriam Vogel is back with us. I told you she was coming in today. An important voice in all of this, and I think we can characterize her as an optimist, but also helps to reset our clock when the narrative gets to be a little bit too dark around an emerging revolutionary technology. She's the president and CEO of EqualAI and first joined us to talk about her book, Governing the Machine, How to Navigate the Risks of AI and Unlock Its True Potential. They're also out with a new white paper that we're going to talk about on the challenges that companies are facing in adopting AI. It's great to have you back with us in studio. Welcome back to Bloomberg.
Thanks so much for having me.
I don't know if I even described this properly because even I don't claim to understand what happened here. The fact is, though, you've got models who are acting on their own without prompts, apparently, and breaking out of the sandbox. Is this, in fact, a watershed moment?
This is a wake-up call. I would say two takeaways we all should think about here. First of all, we should not be surprised. We've been told for years that an algorithm will do exactly what it's told to do. There's a pleaser issue. It will not question or judge. It doesn't have judgment. It doesn't have context.
Yeah.
It will achieve the end goals that it is mandated to do.
A pleaser issue because it's been told to satisfy whoever's in charge of this model.
At all costs.
Okay.
And so what we need to do, the second point, is urgently act to put in guardrails. What are guardrails? What is governance? It's adding the judgment, the context, the end goal of human safety as one of the priorities that needs to be taken into account when it achieves this end goal, whatever that end goal is in any algorithm ever.
Wow. All right. So does a wake-up call present something we should be scared of or an opportunity to fix a vulnerability before it's unleashed on the
That's a great question, Joe. This is an opportunity. As you mentioned, we have this white paper just released. It's based on a summit we had very recently with leading deployers of what's called agentic AI. And that's what moment we're in now. This is not a future sci-fi scenario. Right now, 50% of leading companies are using agentic AI. And what does that mean? They are AI systems that operate to achieve a task. So as opposed to just summarizing an email or a report.
This has a specific job.
And it will operate across a system. It will achieve an end goal of planning a trip, of operationalizing and increasing efficiency in a workflow. It will take multiple steps with limited to no human involvement. And so that means we have to be especially careful. And what we found at our summit is there's an urgency to make sure there's clarity on what is governance that we expect of all AI systems. particularly now as we're going into agentic AI and we're increasingly removing humans from the equation, we need to understand exactly what we're asking these AI systems to do and make sure it has the context to understand, to prioritize human and society in each of these angles.
This is lofty stuff. When you say governance, is this a self-policing situation right now, or are you suggesting the government needs to create regulations?
I think governance needs to be a multifaceted approach. It needs to be something, I think of it as an umbrella or a wheel where there are multiple spokes, there's multiple pieces of it. Government has a role for sure, but a lot of what happens when we're talking about AI system has to happen inside the organization. You can't regulate your way out of this. Now, government and other organizations can be helpful in clarifying the end goals, because right now I have the privilege of working with organizations that are all prioritizing AI governance. They want to make sure that their outputs are safe and benefit society, but they are figuring out on their own in silos what those best practices are, and that's not where we want to be. We have this summit to align on the best practices so they can learn from one another, but we want to make sure everybody understands what these best practices are.
So these 100 companies you put in a room to create this white paper are already using AI, want to be using AI, or a combination?
They're all deep in agentic
They're
AI.
deep already. Okay, so they have embraced this as something that will make them more productive, more efficient. How many people were afraid of what could happen versus excited for what could happen?
It's a great question. I would say people are doing this work because they are hopeful at what the outcomes will be, but they are all very intentional in needing to put in the safeguards urgently, immediately, that they put in on their own systems across society. So a lot of our work was, what does a company need to have in place today to make sure they are clear on what their outputs are, to make sure they're not creating harm and risks? But there's also a societal piece. We need to make sure that there's alignment. And the place that we see that the most is in this distrust that the general public in the US feels towards AI. It is because we don't have governance in place across the society. We don't have expectations of what should AI be doing, what should it not be doing, and how do I use it safely?
Things have been getting pretty dark recently. Data center moratorium in New York. People are talking about their bills going up. Republicans in some cases. The populist movement on both sides of the aisle are kind of lining up against this. It's even getting a thumbs down right now on Wall Street. How did we get to this point? Is this sort of an equal opposite reaction to the euphoria we were feeling around NVIDIA's visit, Jensen Huang's speech here in Washington a year ago?
Again, I think this is to be expected. If you told people in the early 1800s to get in an elevator without ensuring that they would be safe when they got to the top floor, they would not put themselves in it. They wouldn't sit in an airplane. They wouldn't entrust their children in a car if they did not know there were safety protocols, that the brakes would be working, that there's an odometer, so you know how fast you're going, and so that you can speed up. Without these governance structures in place, people don't have reason to trust systems. So the more we can be talking about what smart companies are doing to build this trust, deserve this trust, the better off we all are.
I learned about the Tahiti problem from your study here. Participants offered the illustration of hundreds of agents simultaneously calling a small resort in Tahiti to make reservations, which could flood the resort's human-paced systems to the point of failure. Does everyone have the Tahiti problem in this collection of companies you talked to? And is this the reason why they adopted AI to begin with?
It's such a good question. What is the end goal? How does this play out when we have the machines versus the human systems we have in place? We came across many challenges we're going to confront. One, as you said, the Tahiti problem. A huge problem is data. You know, if agentic systems are operating, what are they operating on? The data that they're training and operating off of. So we need to make sure that there's context, that it's not the slop that is out there, that we have privacy protections in place. We talked about really interesting questions like consent. You know, when you're authorizing this agent to take actions on your behalf, how do we maintain what that consent you gave as the use changes, as the context change? It's going to be operating often with other agents across a system of operations. So you want to make sure that it's clear on what you've given authority for it to do. So visibility into how you're using AI is an absolute must in governance. Authority, accountability. Who is accountable at the end of the day in the C-suite for these operations and across the line to make sure that these tests that we've just seen that have gone off the guardrails are are certain that there's authority, there's accountability in place.
Yeah.